It's rare to see NBA players fully own up in court, but some, like J.R. Smith, didn't hold back when they messed up.
I take full responsibility for everything that happened, but I mean, indeed, it was an accident.
Ron Artest also openly admitted his mistakes after getting arrested.
I definitely should have got a pass on that one. You know, when I went in the stands, it wasn't okay. You know, there's different ways to react.
From raw honesty to surprising confessions, these are 20 NBA players who always kept it real in court. J.R. Smith. Some NBA players try to dodge blame when they're in trouble. J.R. Smith wasn't one of them. Smith's most serious legal trouble came in 2007 while playing for Denver. He ran a stop sign and caused a devastating car accident, severely injuring himself and another person. What separated Smith from other athletes was his immediate acceptance of responsibility. He didn't hire expensive lawyers to fight charges or claim innocence. Smith pleaded guilty and was sentenced to 90 days in prison, serving 30 days with the remainder suspended for community service.
I mean, it's something you can't deal with, and I am deeply sorry. I never intended this to happen.
His courtroom appearance showed genuine remorse. Smith talked about how the victim was like a brother to him, making the accident even more devastating personally.
I take full responsibility for everything that happened, but I mean, indeed, it was an accident.
In 2011, Smith had a minor scooter incident during the NBA lockout, getting ticketed for riding without a license in Miami. He handled this transparently too, not contesting the ticket. Smith's straightforward approach to accountability helped him rebuild his reputation. His focus on family, especially caring for his premature daughter, furthered his redemption arc. He eventually won 2 NBA championships, proving that taking responsibility can lead to redemption. Just like Smith, this next player also took responsibility for his actions. Metta artist, formerly Ron Artest. Ron Artest's legal troubles started with the infamous malice at the Palace in 2004. When a fan threw a drink at him, Artest charged into the stands and attacked who he thought was the perpetrator. The brawl spiraled into chaos with players and fans throwing punches everywhere. Artest received a 73-game suspension, one of the longest in NBA history. While he avoided criminal charges, the incident marked his reputation forever. But years later, he showed genuine remorse about his actions.
I definitely should have got a pass on that one. You know, when I went in the stands, it wasn't okay. You know, there's different ways to react.
In 2007, Artest faced domestic violence charges, pleading no contest to corporal abuse. He was sentenced to 10 days in prison, 100 hours of community service, and ordered to attend treatment programs. What made Artest different was his complete ownership of his mistakes. He didn't make excuses or blame circumstances. His transformation was real. He changed. His name to Metta World Peace, reflecting his shift toward positivity. After his suspension, he cooperated with the NBA and won a championship with the Lakers in 2010. He became a mental health advocate, openly discussing his struggles and encouraging others to seek help. Allen Iverson. Allen Iverson's legal troubles reflected his keep-it-real persona that made him beloved by fans. In 1997, Iverson was caught carrying a weapon and illegal narcotics. Instead of fighting the charges with expensive legal teams, he pleaded guilty but managed to escape prison time, receiving community service instead. Iverson also faced accusations of assault and kidnapping, though the kidnapping charge was later recanted by his ex-wife. These incidents contributed to his bad boy reputation, but Iverson never tried to hide from who he was or apologize for his authenticity. What made Iverson different was his guilty plea in 1997, showing willingness to accept consequences rather than drag out a legal battle. His public persona remained unapologetically authentic, focusing on his roots and street credibility. This resonated with fans who appreciated his realness, even amid legal troubles. Iverson remained open about his off-court lifestyle, never shying away from his image as a rebellious yet talented star. Some saw this as keeping it real in the cultural sense, staying true to his identity regardless of criticism. He didn't try to become someone else to please corporate sponsors or league officials. His legal issues didn't derail his Hall of Fame career, where he was known for electrifying play and authenticity. Iverson's ability to navigate legal challenges while maintaining his identity made him an icon. His off-court controversies sparked debates about NBA player conduct, but his supporters argued that his honesty about his lifestyle was more respectable than players who hid their true selves. Our next player, however, took responsibility in another way: Carmelo Anthony. Carmelo Anthony's legal troubles came early in his career, but didn't define him thanks to his accountability and community work. In 2004, Anthony was arrested for marijuana possession at an airport, a charge that impacted his early reputation when the NBA was cracking down on player conduct. In 2008, he faced more serious charges with a DUI arrest. Anthony pleaded guilty to driving under the influence, avoiding jail time but facing fines and community service. What made his approach different was his cooperation with authorities and lack of public denial. Anthony's guilty guilty plea in the DUI case showed accountability. He didn't publicly deny responsibility or deflect blame, which helped him maintain his career trajectory. His transparency about growing up in tough circumstances and occasional missteps resonated with fans who valued his authenticity. More importantly, Anthony channeled his resources into positive community work. He established a foundation focused on feeding children, showing that his accountability extended beyond just accepting legal consequences.
It's like Christmas. It's like New Year's, man. Like really, yo. Carmelo's a good dude, man.
Community members recognized his genuine efforts to give back, with one foundation recipient expressing gratitude for his programs.
I have done this before because there are so many families, unfortunately, that are not able to have anything for Thanksgiving or any other holiday.
Despite early legal troubles, Anthony became a 10-time All-Star and one of the NBA's top scorers. His ability to move past legal issues while maintaining community involvement showcased resilience and genuine character growth. While Anthony turned his legal troubles into community service, our next player took a much darker path that led to one of the NBA's biggest fraud scandals. Terrence Williams. Terrence Williams masterminded one of the most significant fraud schemes in NBA history. From 2017 to 2021, Williams led a conspiracy to defraud the NBA's health and welfare benefit plan, submitting fake invoices for $4 million and pocketing $2.5 million personally. Williams wasn't just a participant. He was the ringleader who recruited other former players and intimidated co-conspirators when they hesitated. He even committed aggravated identity theft by impersonating plan administrators to pressure others into compliance. Williams would create fake medical and dental invoices, then convince other former players to submit them for reimbursement. When the money came through, Williams would take his cut while the unwitting participants received smaller amounts. What made Williams keep it real in a twisted sense was his eventual guilty plea and cooperation with prosecutors. When caught, he didn't maintain innocence or fight the charges. Court documents noted his cooperation, though his actions leading up to that point were completely criminal. Williams was sentenced to 10 years in prison after pleading guilty, receiving one of the harshest sentences in the case. His cooperation may have reduced what could have been an even longer sentence, but his role as the mastermind meant serious consequences. The next player was also one of Terrence's victims, Glenn Davis. Glenn Davis was convicted in November 2023 for his role in the NBA healthcare fraud scheme alongside Terrence Williams. Davis submitted false claims totaling $4 million and received $2.5 million in fraudulent proceeds, including fake dental claims for procedures he never received. Unlike Williams, who pleaded guilty early, Davis initially chose to fight the charges in court.
And so now I got to go to trial because they think I did something that I know I didn't do. You know what I mean? That I know that I'm innocent. You know what I mean? The whole situation, I never got any money.
He went to trial and was found guilty on 4 counts, including wire fraud, healthcare fraud, and conspiracy to commit fraud. The evidence showed he claimed dental work done in California while he was actually in Nevada. Davis was sentenced to 40 months in prison, significantly less than Williams' 10-year sentence, reflecting his smaller role in the scheme. Davis later admitted his involvement, explaining how he got caught up in the scheme through other players.
Having an injury and not knowing that you can get compensated for all the stuff that you just went through. That was my intention.
He acknowledged that his intentions weren't to defraud, but admitted he should have been more careful about checking the legitimacy of the claims. Davis, a 2008 NBA champion with Boston, saw his legal troubles tarnish his legacy as part of the broader fraud scandal involving 18 former players. Another player caught in the same fraud web also tried to fight the charges, but with even less success than Davis, Keyon Dooling. Keyon Dooling played for teams including the New Jersey Nets and Milwaukee Bucks, and later served as an assistant coach for the Utah Jazz, became deeply involved in the NBA benefits fraud scheme. Unlike some participants who only submitted personal claims, Dooling facilitated fraudulent claims for others while personally receiving about $363,000 in illicit reimbursements. His role went beyond being just another victim of the conspiracy. Dooling actively helped coordinate fraudulent activities, making him more culpable than players who simply submitted false claims for themselves. This deeper involvement in facilitating the scheme made his legal situation significantly more serious than some co-conspirators. Dooling was arrested in April 2022 and immediately showed accountability by pleading guilty that same month in federal court to conspiracy to commit healthcare fraud and wire fraud. His quick guilty plea demonstrated understanding that fighting the charges would be futile given the evidence against him. However, Dooling's more extensive role in the conspiracy meant his cooperation couldn't completely offset his criminal liability. In February February 2023, he was sentenced to 30 months in prison, followed by 3 years of supervised release. The court also ordered him to pay $547,495 in restitution and forfeit $449,250.50. Despite the prison sentence, Dooling's early accountability likely reduced what could have been an even harsher punishment. His cooperation with investigators probably helped prosecutors understand the full scope of the conspiracy and build cases against other participants. Dooling served about 10 months before his release and has since spoken publicly about his experience in prison.
I didn't shower or shave the first day. I just kind of soaked it all in, and then the next morning I was like, okay, let's snap out of it. Let's get into your routine. Let's figure out how you're gonna do your time, because that's very important when you're behind.
Moving on to another player who wasn't afraid of accountability, we have Shawn Kemp. Shawn Kemp faced legal troubles across different decades of his life, but consistently showed accountability when caught. In 2005, Kemp was arrested for possession of cocaine, 50 grams of marijuana, and semi-automatic weapons. This was serious criminal behavior that could have resulted in significant prison time. Instead of fighting the charges or claiming innocence, Kemp pleaded guilty to the drug charges. He received a fine and community service rather than prison time, likely because of his cooperation and guilty plea. This showed accountability rather than trying to beat the system. Nearly 2 decades later, Kemp faced more serious charges. In 2023, he was arrested after a drive-by shooting in a Tacoma Mall parking lot, allegedly firing at a car involved in a dispute. This could have been a career-ending scandal for the retired 6-time All-Star. However, Kemp cooperated with authorities and provided evidence supporting his self-defense claim. The charges were dropped in May 2023 after evidence showed he acted in self-defense rather than as an aggressor. His transparency with law enforcement helped resolve the case quickly. In 2005, he accepted consequences for his drug possession rather than fighting charges he knew were valid. In 2023, he cooperated fully with the investigation, providing evidence that supported his innocence claim. From individual accountability, we moved to a case involving multiple NBA players who faced charges together but were ultimately cleared. Sam Cassell. Sam Cassell, along with teammates Gary Payton and Jason Caffy, was arrested in Toronto in 2003 for allegedly assaulting a male stripper and his fiancée in a nightclub parking lot. Charges were serious enough to potentially damage all 3 players' careers and reputations. What made Cassell's approach noteworthy was his willingness to face the charges in court rather than trying to settle out of court or flee legal scrutiny. Many wealthy athletes try to make problems disappear with money, but Cassell stood by his innocence and went through the legal process. The case dragged on for years, with all 3 players maintaining their innocence throughout. In 2007, a judge acquitted all 3 players, finding insufficient evidence to support the assault charges. The acquittal vindicated their decision to fight the charges rather than accept plea deals. The acquittal allowed Cassell to continue his successful NBA career without lasting legal repercussions. He went on to win a championship with the Boston Celtics in 2008, proving that sometimes fighting charges when you're truly innocent pays off. Gary Payton faced the exact same charges as Cassell, but his story includes additional legal issues that showed his complicated relationship with accountability. Gary Payton. Gary Payton was involved in the same Toronto nightclub assault case as Sam Cassell in 2003. Like his teammate, Payton was accused of attacking a stripper and his fiancée in a parking lot. He maintained his innocence throughout the legal process and was acquitted alongside Cassell in 2007. Payton's approach mirrored Cassell's. He went through the court process and was cleared, maintaining his innocence without creating public controversy. However, Payton later revealed another legal incident that showed a more complicated side of his accountability. In a 2022 Vlad TV interview, he recounted an incident during Seattle Supersonics practice in the 1990s, where he intended to hit teammate Vernon Maxwell with a 10-pound weight, but accidentally struck Horace Grant instead.
It was a blank out. It was a blank out. It was a blank out, and it went to a level, and then I heard Horace, and I really messed up Horace.
Grant suffered a head injury requiring stitches and missed games because of Payton's actions. The incident resulted in a massive fine for Payton.
How much you get fined for that?
It was almost about a couple of $100,000.
Payton's willingness to discuss this incident years later showed a level of accountability, even for something that happened decades ago. He expressed genuine regret about accidentally hurting Grant, showing that his accountability extended beyond just legal matters. As a Hall of Famer known as the Glove, Payton's legal issues were minor footnotes in an otherwise stellar career. His approach of fighting false charges while owning up to actual mistakes demonstrated balanced accountability. The third player involved in that Toronto incident had a much lower profile but showed similar accountability in court: Jason Caffy. Jason Caffy was the third player arrested alongside Sam Cassell and Gary Payton in the 2003 Toronto nightclub incident. Like his more famous teammates, Caffy was accused of assaulting a male stripper and his fiancée in a parking lot outside the club. Caffy maintained his innocence and went through the legal process rather than trying to settle or avoid court. His acquittal in 2007 alongside Cassell and Payton suggested he stood his ground legally and was vindicated. Being less prominent than Cassell and Payton, Caffy handled the case with a lower profile, avoiding media escalation or public statements that could have made the situation worse. His quiet approach to the legal proceedings showed maturity in handling serious accusations. The acquittal meant Caffy's career wasn't derailed by the charges, though he was already fading from NBA prominence by that time. His involvement in the case didn't create lasting damage to his reputation, partly because of how he handled the legal process. Moving from group legal troubles to individual cases, our next player faced charges for attacking a law enforcement officer, Tony Allen. Tony Allen, a retired NBA guard known for his defensive prowess with the Boston Celtics and Memphis Grizzlies, became one of the most prominent names caught in the NBA healthcare fraud scandal. Allen and his wife were accused of submitting false claims totaling around $420,000 for non-existent medical procedures, making their case one of the larger individual fraud amounts in the conspiracy. What made Allen's case particularly serious was the accusation that he and his wife used stolen identities in some instances to submit their fraudulent claims. This added the federal crime of aggravated identity theft to their charges, which typically carries mandatory minimum sentences and shows a more sophisticated level of criminal planning. Allen's approach to the charges demonstrated immediate accountability once caught. On April 5th, 2023, he pleaded guilty in federal court to one count of conspiracy to commit healthcare fraud and wire fraud, along with aggravated identity theft. His decision to plead guilty rather than fight the charges showed he understood the severity of the evidence against him. More importantly, Allen took proactive steps to demonstrate his remorse and accountability. He repaid most of the fraudulently obtained money before his sentencing hearing, showing genuine effort to make amends for his crimes rather than just accepting whatever punishment the court imposed. In August 2023, a judge sentenced Allen to community service, 3 years of probation and supervision instead of prison time. His early guilty plea, cooperation with authorities, and proactive restitution payments likely influenced the court's decision to avoid incarceration. While Allen's defensive skills earned him respect on the court, his accountability in the courtroom helped him avoid the prison time that less cooperative defendants received. Just like Allen, the next player took practical steps to own up to his mistake. Chris Anderson. Chris Anderson's legal troubles were unique because they were handled through NBA arbitration rather than criminal courts. In 2006, Anderson was banned from the NBA for 2 years for violating the league's anti-drug policy, likely involving cocaine or other banned substances. While Anderson faced no criminal charges, the league's arbitration process was like a legal proceeding that could have ended his career permanently. Many players who received drug bans never returned to professional basketball, making Anderson's situation extremely serious. Anderson didn't fight the ban or claim the tests were wrong. Instead, he entered a counseling program and worked on rehabilitation while serving his suspension. He was also very vocal about his drug use and ensured that he didn't give up despite all his struggles.
Hiccups and a couple of hurdles that I had to climb, but I still had that same mentality. I never give up, and I always fight through whatever situation I have to fight through, and I leave that in my rearview mirror, and I just keep on stomping forward.
Anderson showed genuine accountability and successfully appealed for reinstatement after demonstrating his rehabilitation, showing the league he had changed. Birdman made a remarkable comeback, winning a championship with the Miami Heat in 2013. Next up, we have Melvin Ely. Melvin Ely, a former NBA player who suited up for teams like the Los Angeles Clippers and Charlotte Bobcats, found himself caught up in the same widespread healthcare fraud scheme that ensnared numerous other ex-players. Like his co-conspirators, Ely participated in submitting fraudulent claims to the NBA players' health and welfare benefit plan for medical and dental services that were never actually provided. Eli's involvement in the scheme netted him approximately $36,000 in illegal reimbursements. While this amount was significantly less than what ringleaders like Terrence Williams received, it still represented serious federal crimes that could have resulted in substantial prison time. In April 2023, Ely pleaded guilty in federal court in Manhattan to one count of conspiracy to commit healthcare fraud and wire fraud. His decision to plead guilty rather than fight the charges showed immediate acceptance of responsibility. More importantly, Ely cooperated extensively with prosecutors investigating the broader conspiracy. His willingness to provide information about how the scheme operated and who else was involved demonstrated genuine accountability accountability that went beyond just admitting his own guilt. Due to his cooperation with federal prosecutors, Ely avoided prison time entirely when sentenced in November 2024. Instead, he received 3 years of supervised release plus restitution payments to compensate for the defrauded benefit plan. Moving from another fraud participant to the larger themes these stories reveal, we can see how accountability plays out differently across various legal situations. Damon Stoudamire. Damon Stoudamire was a key member of the Portland Jailblazers, a team notorious for players' legal troubles in the early 2000s. Stoudamire was arrested multiple times between 2002 and 2003 for marijuana possession, including incidents at an airport and during traffic stops. His repeated arrests showed a pattern of poor decision-making, but Stoudamire's approach to the legal consequences showed accountability. He pleaded guilty to misdemeanor charges each time, receiving fines and community service rather than fighting the charges or claiming innocence. Stoudamire's guilty pleas and public apologies showed he understood he had made mistakes. However, his repeated arrests suggested struggles with personal discipline and learning from previous consequences. As a talented point guard, Stoudamire's legal issues contributed to the Jailblazers' notoriety that damaged the Trailblazers' reputation. The team became synonymous with player misconduct, and Stoudamire was a significant part of that narrative. Despite his legal troubles, Stoudamire continued having a respectable NBA career. His willingness to accept consequences for his actions, even if he kept making similar mistakes, showed a level of accountability that helped him avoid more serious punishment. Another prominent Jailblazer also faced marijuana charges, but handled them with his characteristic no-nonsense approach. Rasheed Wallace. Rasheed Wallace was another key member of the Portland Jailblazers who faced marijuana possession charges during his time with the Trailblazers. Like his teammate Stoudamire, Wallace was arrested for marijuana possession but handled the legal consequences in his own straightforward way. Wallace pleaded guilty to misdemeanor charges and paid fines, resolving his legal issues without much public drama. His approach was consistent with his personality, direct and without unnecessary complications or excuses. Wallace handled his off-court legal issues quietly. While he was known for his fiery on-court persona and record-setting technical fouls, he resolved legal matters without creating additional media attention. Wallace's legal troubles were minor compared to his on-court controversies, but they added to Portland's troubled reputation during that era. The Jailblazers moniker came partly from accumulated minor infractions like Wallace's marijuana arrests. Despite the legal issues and team reputation problems, Wallace went on to win an NBA championship with the Detroit Pistons in 2004. His ability to focus on basketball while handling legal matters responsibly showed mature priority. The Jailblazers era included several other players with similar issues, including the enigmatic Isaiah Rider. Isaiah Rider was another troubled member of the Portland Jailblazers who faced multiple arrests during the 1990s. Rider was arrested for marijuana possession and other minor offenses, including gambling disputes that showed his involvement in questionable activities. Like his teammates, Rider pleaded guilty to various charges and received fines and probation. His cooperation with legal consequences and lack of denial aligned with a straightforward, if troubled, approach to his legal issues. Rider's legal troubles were part of a pattern of poor decision-making that overshadowed his considerable basketball talent. He had early promise as a high-flying guard, but couldn't stay out of trouble long enough to fulfill his potential. His approach to legal accountability was consistent. He didn't fight charges or make excuses, but he also didn't seem to learn from the consequences. This pattern of accepting punishment while continuing problematic behavior defined much of his career. Rider's talent was significant enough that teams kept giving him chances despite his legal issues. However, his inability to avoid trouble ultimately led to a shorter NBA career than his skills warranted. Another player from that era had similar issues but eventually found success after leaving Portland's troubled environment. Darius Miles. Darius Miles was part of the Jailblazers era and faced marijuana possession charges like several teammates. He pleaded guilty to misdemeanor charges and received fines or probation, showing the same pattern of accountability as other Portland players from that time. However, Miles's legal troubles extended beyond his Portland days. Years later, he was charged in the NBA healthcare fraud scheme, submitting false claims for medical treatments he never received. In the fraud case, Miles pleaded guilty and cooperated with authorities, likely helping reduce his sentence. His cooperation in this more serious case showed he learned from his earlier legal experiences about the benefits of accountability. Miles's guilty pleas in both cases, the minor marijuana charges and the serious fraud case, showed consistent willingness to accept responsibility for his actions. His cooperation in the fraud case was particularly important given the severity of the charges. As a once promising high school to NBA star, Miles saw his legal troubles diminish his legacy. The fraud conviction especially damaged his reputation, as it came years after his playing career ended. The fraud scheme that caught Miles also ensnared several other former players, including Sebastian Telfair. Sebastian Telfair was charged in the NBA healthcare fraud scheme, submitting fraudulent invoices for medical treatments he never received. Like several other players in the scheme, he pleaded guilty and received a lighter sentence due to his cooperation with authorities. Telfair also had earlier legal troubles, including weapons charges in 2007 when he was arrested for possessing a loaded gun during a traffic stop. He pleaded guilty to a misdemeanor and received probation, handling the charges straightforwardly. His guilty pleas in both cases, the weapons charges and the fraud scheme, showed consistent willingness to accept consequences rather than fight charges in court. This approach likely helped him avoid harsher punishment in both situations. Telfair's cooperation in the fraud scheme was particularly important, as federal prosecutors valued information from defendants who helped them understand how the conspiracy worked. His assistance probably reduced his sentence significantly. Our final player in the fraud scheme had a minimal NBA career, but showed the same pattern of accountability when caught. Antoine Wright. Antoine Wright was the final player charged in the NBA healthcare fraud scheme, submitting fake invoices for medical treatments and receiving fraudulent reimbursements. Like most others in the conspiracy, he was arrested and pleaded guilty to the charges. Wright's guilty plea and lack of public denial suggested he took responsibility for his involvement once caught. His cooperation with authorities helped resolve his case and likely reduced his potential sentence compared to scheme leaders. As a journeyman player who had a modest NBA career, Wright's involvement in the fraud scheme became the most notable thing about his professional life. The conviction overshadowed whatever basketball accomplishments he had achieved. Wright received a sentence lighter than ringleader Terrence Williams, reflecting his smaller role in the overall conspiracy. However, his conviction still resulted in prison time and permanent damage to his reputation. Wright's story ended his public relevance on a negative note, with the fraud conviction becoming his lasting legacy. His willingness to accept responsibility, while commendable, couldn't overcome the damage done by his criminal actions. If you enjoyed this video, click on any of the cards on your screen for more content.